I think honestly, the whole thing with the sex and the whole thing with the assault, smoke and mirrors. The prosecutor is basically putting that up, and the defense is biting on it and really defending that when that's not really the crux of the matter.
Real life. If that shit ain't real life,
it ain't real life. Just ain't real. Real life street Starz. You know what time it is.
Real life street Starz. Let's go. Man, we got my lawyer in the building.
Yeah.
Good to be back.
Real life lawyer.
Come on, man.
And he's about to take us on a journey and a ride and tell us what's really going on in this courtroom with this Diddy situation, man. I don't even know where to start, man. You want to start with, I don't know, where should we start?
You know, man, we can start off with some of the testimony and what has been said either by Cassidy or the male escort, and we can kind of work our way into it. But I'll tell you this. And
are we doing a recap of the first week?
Yeah.
Okay, because we haven't spoke on it.
Right. We can just talk about it, have a conversation about what you think or what I think took place in that first week. You can ask me questions in regard to that, but I will tell you that the caveat and the thing that you want to use your reels for is Cassidy is not who we think Cassidy is in this trial.
Okay, let's break that down because I've been watching the trial. Right. I've watched every second of this trial. I've gotten everybody's information on this trial. So let's start here, right? We have Cassie on the stand, right? She's pregnant. Mm-hmm. They threatened mistrial because they feel like they're rushing Cassie off the stand. Is this a usual practice where you have a pregnant woman that's testifying where the defense is like, yo, I mean, y'all are kind of rushing us. Why didn't y'all put her first if y'all were going to do that?
You know, you have the right to put your case in whatever order you want. And right now, it's the government's case. And so I was like everyone else, like, why did they put her on first? But now I get it. I think I truly understand. And so I'm hoping that my track record of being 11 for 11 correct on what's happening with the case. I hope I'm keeping my track record intact, but I think I honestly see where the government is going with this.
Got you, because a lot of people don't, right? A lot of people are like, they keep making her disclose her sexual deviancy, if you will, and they keep talking about abuse. And they're all like, we're trying to tie this into sex trafficking, but we don't see it yet. So where are we missing this? Like,
I think, honestly, the whole thing with the sex and the whole thing with the assault, smoke and mirrors. The prosecutor is basically putting that up, and the defense is biting on it and really defending that when that's not really the crux of the matter. So if you look, there are 2 allegations of sex trafficking. There are 2 allegations of sex trafficking. There's the racketeering.
Right.
And then there's 2 other charges. I'm trying to think of what they are.
Somebody look that up real quick.
Real quick. I have them. I have what they are. So it's the 2 allegations of racketeering and then transportation to engage in prostitution. So those is two counts of that. And so you think about it. They didn't really allege that Cassidy was sex trafficked. Right? They didn't really allege that she was brought or prostituted. So
right, because it seems the other way around. It seems like yeah.
So at first I was kind of like, okay, what are they getting at? What is the prosecution really wanting to prove with having her on so early, and why did they put the male escort up first?
Right.
And so I'll tell you right now that the 2 bombshells are later to come with the 2 individuals that they're going to have and come and speak to how they were sex trafficked and how they were transported. How did they get there? Now, you can almost think that the first escort was part of that, right? But he really, in essence, even though sex trafficking, the laws on that are broad, right? They started off in 1909 or 1910, and then they were amended later on, I think in the 80s. But the thing is, they're so broad, he could be basically used to prove sex trafficking, because remember, it was a time that both Diddy and Cassie said, let's bring him to New York. And so they flew him in to New York. Now, as broad as the law is, we could be looking at part of the transportation, part of bringing him in, compensating him to perform a sex act. And so that could be part of it. But the thing is, you really don't need the coercion of the collusion of Cassie or the whole issue with her being beat and traumatized and all of that to prove these cases. So why are you really emphasizing all of this?
Right.
Why? That's the question. Why?
And so the bombshell is this.
RealLyfe Street Stars.
Racketeering requires a conspiracy. And so I was listening to some of the other lawyers and people talk about it, and it's like, well, it's very hard to prove a conspiracy of one and all of this, and it's rarely done. Cassie is not here to prove anything other than the racketeering, because she's the co-conspirator.
Ooh. Let's break that down. She's the co-conspirator how? Because
She's the co-conspirator because in order for you to have the racketeering portion of it, you have to make an agreement that we're going to commit a crime. And racketeering and conspiracy is different than just conspiracy, because conspiracy usually involves just that one act. Like, we're going to rob this bank. But racketeering and conspiracy means multiple instances of breaking the law for a particular end.
Oh, shit.
The transportation of the prostitutes were part of that. And since I've been on this show, I've always told you that the main thing that'll get you caught up is the transfer of money through wire, Cash App, and some of the other acts, or some of the other means. That all the elements are met. She's the co-conspirator. The crime is prostitution. You can even throw in money laundering if they paid cash, because now you paid someone to commit an illegal act in a means in which it's unrecorded.
And they just up there telling it too. They up there willingly telling it. That's the crazy part.
Because everyone is so confused and so focused in on the sex acts that are happening. Like, we're talking about the peeing. And who did Puffy ask him to pee, or did she ask him to pee?
Right.
We're talking more like my man Iverson said. You're talking about peeing? You're talking about peeing? We're on trial for racketeering, and you're talking sex trafficking, and you're talking about peeing? Because that whole incident, that whole situation is meant to really potentially take the defense off their game. And so they're focusing in on, they keep saying it. Yeah, he's a bad guy. And they're more focused on saying, okay, he's a bad guy. He beats women. That's a state crime. We're not in state court. And so that's not the issue. And so she is the co-conspirator. She tells how she went and got the item. She tells about how they recruited them, how they got people in, the acts that took place. So she's laying down she's literally up there ratting on the conspiracy. So she's not the victim. So this is some usual suspect type stuff. And I hope I'm right.
Yeah.
I hope I'm right in this, let me say this. I hope I'm right because I think I understand where the feds are going with this.
Right.
I don't want to see anybody go to jail. Right. But at the same time, I don't want to see anyone get beaten, and I don't want to see anyone trafficked.
Right.
But as a lawyer and being a student of the law, I'm just intrigued by how different lawyers treat their cases.
Yeah.
And I think that the feds are actually throwing all of this out there, and everyone is so caught up with the sex acts.
Right.
That they're missing the fact that she's basically laying out the conspiracy of the racketeering.
Is peeing on someone assault?
If it's unwanted, if I hit your car and you're in it, I've assaulted you. And so anything that you hit that's connected to someone's body or their body is a form of assault. So if she didn't want to be peed on, yeah. But the crazy thing about it is the escort, who seemed to be extremely credible, right?
Extremely.
Right.
He said, and when asked by the defense, you sure Puffy didn't ask? No, Mr. Combs didn't ask, she asked. And she gave me detail on how she wanted it done. And that's a killer. And so all of us at one point were like, she telling them how to pee on them. That ain't sexual trafficking, and that ain't that. We were right, but we were just looking at the wrong thing.
Right. She's, oh man. So let me ask you this, right?
Told you I had a bombshell for you.
He threw the grenade, boy, and so I've been watching this case, right? And there's a when you hear some of these people's side, like they'll say, well, isn't she not complicit in some of these acts if she's going back to the guy? For example, she gets beat by Diddy. She goes back and has sex with Diddy. Diddy pushes her, gashes her eye. He then pays for plastic surgery. She then goes back to Diddy. Like at some point, they're going to say grooming, right? But if you're 19, you're an adult. So at what point does age and grooming not match?
So once again, we're going to talk about this. And it's being talked about, but that's not the issue at hand.
Right.
Right? We're talking about how the food was. And everybody's saying good, and I used the plastic fork when we should be talking about the texture and the seasoning. Right. But you have to be very careful in that regard, especially dealing with someone who's 19 and someone who is older. And it really goes back to someone's, how should I say, maturity at that point. If you're going to argue that point, according to the law, she's an adult and she can do anything that she wants. So if we're going to say grooming, we have to go back and look at someone's mental state, because on the flip side of that, what about the 19-year-old? I represented a young man. She was 16 and she was a prostitute maybe 2 to 3 years before she even met this guy. She played him. Like she needed someone who was over 21 to get her the things that she needed. And he was naive.
See, and they never talk about that part of the game. That's where I was going with it. Like,
and so she had it down to a science. She would meet a guy and she would go to 7-Eleven and she would come out with a wine cooler and cigarettes. Got to be 18 to buy a wine cooler. Cigarettes, and have to be 21 to buy alcohol. Right. But she had an arrangement with the guy at the 7-Eleven. So when you see her come out with that, you automatically say, oh, she look young, but she has these items. I don't really need to ask her for her ID or how old she is, because evidently she's at least 21.
So would that not be coercion the other way?
It don't matter, because it is certain crimes that you commit. Yeah. There are no defenses to. They are what they are. They're statutory. Right. It can't happen.
Even if she hit him with the fake ID.
It can't happen.
It can't happen. You gotta have an ID detector. As a prosecutor, is there something that you would have asked Cassie on the stand that they didn't?
So it's really hard to say, that because we're all getting just bits and pieces of the transcript. And I really, if I was her and I kind of wanted to lay the foundation and really nail it down, I would have went into details of the transfer of the money. How did he pay him? Which accounts did he potentially pay him for? Did he ever make you pay it?
Right.
And which accounts did you pay from? And when you went shopping for items, where did you get those items from?
Right.
Did he ever give you cash to pay him? And so I would have really focused in on the transactional portion of it. And watch, this is the thing, they could bring her back.
Right.
Because they may not want to have her talk about what they're going to have the two alleged victims talk about as far as how they were sex trafficked.
Right. If
the prosecution is not using the first male escort as one of the individuals who were sex trafficked, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to be someone that is going to be more of a victim.
Right. They showed a lot of photos of like the sex photos pretty much of going on. Do you think those things will get leaked at all?
At some point, man, you got to think about it. You know, it depends on who Puffy had around him. It depends on who had access to these tapes and videos prior to him getting arrested and prior to the feds coming in and seizing it. And anyone could have, what always ends up happening is someone in your own entourage grabs something either for their own personal use or to use later on.
Right.
And they hold on to it. But I will tell you, if you do leak that, chances are you're going to be charged with a federal crime.
Right. Okay.
You know, with this case, right? There's just been a lot of things, right? How would you score the defense versus the prosecution with Cassie, right?
I really liked the defense up until I unlocked the code.
Oh, so when did you realize what play was being said?
Earlier today, when I was listening to
Don Richards.
Yeah, and I was listening to her former friend and the guy, his former assistant, and I was listening to him, and then I was going back and forth and looking at the law and looking at the statutes, and it just wasn't really making a whole lot of sense.
Right.
Because you have these people focusing in on him beating her, and I don't know why they put this last friend on, because she really didn't go into anything other than the video that happened at the Intercontinental and the acts that Puffy did after the fact. Now, also part of that whole conspiracy and racketeering.
Yeah.
What is it illegal to have? Cocaine, opioids.
Ooh.
Right.
And so all of that and Cassie said she did. She said she did drugs.
Right.
So now we got a conspiracy to provide drugs at a party because you're supplying it. That in itself is an illegal act. And so all of these things, when you start looking at racketeering and combined with conspiracy, you're looking at a number of illegal acts that took place. And these behaviors or people acting in concert to facilitate this illegal act, this criminal enterprise, as they say. And so if I'm bringing in drugs, illegal drugs constantly to a party, to a group of people on a regular basis, you and I are in agreement that we're going to supply these things. There you go.
So is Cassie innocent in any of this? Can she have charges?
Look, man, I reserve opinion on anyone because I don't know I don't know that woman.
Right. But I mean, if you're looking at it, you know, she's in cahoots with, you see what I'm saying? Like
I do. I would want to see a psych evaluation or hear from an expert to talk about her behaviors and the things that took place and the things that happened to her,
Right.
and explain how they feel that all affected her mental state
Right.
at the time. Because on one end, just like everyone else, they say, she makes a statement, I did it because I didn't want him to be unhappy. I did it to make him happy. I did it because I didn't want him to find someone else to do it with.
It's like swap.
And so when you say those type of things, those aren't really things that are 100% gun to your head, take your clothes off, sleep with this dude.
Yeah,
Right.
those things.
Those are things, it can be considered several ways, but at the same time, she could have been in a mental state in which she was just so broken down and beaten down that he had handcuffs on her mentally and not physically, to the point where he picks up the phone and says, hey girl, get over here right now and take your clothes off. And she is perfectly safe. She's in a police station, but yet she leaves the police station to come to him. And so that's not normal. And so there's so many different caveats in this. And until we hear from experts that can really break down the behavior,
Yeah.
it's just our own personal opinion. But I will say this, that there are people who do things in this country that we don't know about.
Right.
And one of the things that kind of caught my ear too was they stated that they went to swinger clubs.
Yeah.
So now that takes it into a whole new arena.
Why is it?
Because now you're talking about potentially someone's lifestyle. This is not, and this is public. This is a public lifestyle and not just locked up in some penthouse with security guards outside the door. This is you and I putting on a mask or going to a location that's so exclusive that there's other people like us there,
Right.
who have the same fetishes and the same likes, and they're there, so no one's talking. It's kind of like Heidi Fleiss when she had the prostitution ring.
Yeah.
All the elected officials, professional athletes, movie stars, everybody saw each other coming in and out and moving around this woman, but nobody said anything. And so, but to take it into the public and swing, that's different. That's different. I wasn't expecting that.
What defines a victim in the courts?
The victim. The victim,
Even if the victim is seemingly complicit?
then at that point it goes to the jury. Because I can say I'm a victim, right?
Right.
But if I go to a jury of individuals, I'm not gonna say my peers,
Right.
a jury of individuals, and they say, no, Larry, now you got diabetes, you kind of were complicit in that. You went to the store and bought them Twinkies, right? You drank all that grape soda. And I'm talking about health because I just saw the chef, but you did all these things that affected your body.
Right.
So, victim, I don't know, because it wasn't one thing that you did. It was a multitude of things you did that contributed to your health
Yeah.
or what happened to you.
It doesn't seem like Cassie wanted Diddy to go to jail. The reason I'm saying this is because basically she could have called the police a long time ago, right? But it seemed like she wanted his money.
But we talked about it. We talked about that the first time we talked about
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Diddy's lawyers messed up when, for example, her friend who was suing Puff or Sean, she sent a demand saying, pay me this much, and a copy of the lawsuit that she was going to file. You can't tell me, it's standard practice. You can't tell me Cassie's lawyer didn't do the same thing. And at the moment they read those allegations, I would have took Puffy, made sure there was no baby oil in the room, and grabbed him by his arm and said, hey man, pay this woman. pay this woman, talk to your CPA, find a way to write it off, do whatever you're gonna do, but pay this woman and make sure this does not see the light of day. But the moment that it became public and those allegations came through, look at what happens with every case. Every case like this, the first person has an outcry and immediately there are other victims that come forward. Right? And for example, I think Shannon Sharp, the woman that he was on the video, on the live with, had no problem with it for, what has it been, a year or two? Yeah. But now that this case has come out and this allegation, he's being sued, now she's suing him.
Right, out the woodwork.
Right? And so, anytime these allegations come out, you take if you take a strong stance, you better have some Jay-Z arsenal behind you.
Yeah, Jay-Z's not playing.
So I got a question. They just dropped all the photos of the sex workers today, right? And a lot of times it feels like they're trying to win the public opinion in these court cases. What do you think the outcome of that's going to be?
Oh, the dropping of the photos?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Look.
It's just the diversion?
It's the diversion and it's the shock your senses. I don't know the statistics. I don't. Because I'm not in everyone's bedroom. Right? But, swinger club, watching somebody and doing the things that they did. I would say more than half of America was sitting there reading that with their jaws dropped. Like, what in the...
They didn't even know what's going on.
Right. Like, you had to go back and read it again just to follow because your mind doesn't work like that.
Right.
And so when you shock people in that type of manner, then, because I think someone said that the jury was in shock.
Right, for sure.
Right? And so Sean has pretty much some good things on appeal, because if the whole thing is really about sex trafficking and racketeering, dropping all these photos and doing the things that they're doing really is prejudicing the jury against them.
They're making him a monster before. Yeah.
For his personal life.
Right.
Like, you got a woman and she have 2 husbands. That's not my thing.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm not judging this woman. That's her business. Right? She is, and let's say not husbands, but 2 life partners. That's not against the law. It's not illegal. And my morality isn't her gauge.
Right.
So we can't do that.
Yeah, you're already shaping him like to what the society doesn't go against. So
exactly.
And you're trying to So speaking of him, people not knowing what's going on, right? The husband, I think he ran out of court, right? Or something like that.
One of the days.
He stormed out of court because he's finding out things that he didn't know about, right? And does he have any grounds after this to be like, oh, I want a divorce to get the money because of all the stuff that went on that she didn't tell?
Brother, people have divorced people for less.
Okay.
People have divorced people for less. Right? So, it's, to be honest with you, he might be set up to not only divorce her, but potentially get the children. Right? He didn't know that she was into that type of behavior.
But they said he trained her for the freak offs.
No.
He was the trainer.
Okay, first of all, that visual that you just threw out there.
Training for the freak off.
What is he? How do you? He got a super soaker and all kinds of.
He trained her for the because he said one of the situations was Diddy, and again I've been watching all the footage. They had a freak off, and he wanted her to work on her endurance, so he hired a trainer. Now the reason why Diddy is mad is because she ran off with the trainer that he pays. So they kind of try to make it seem like, well, how did I have so much control when you ran off with the nigga I'm paying? Like, you know, so
That
Too much money.
look,
yeah, way too much money.
look. I honestly think that they probably will get divorced, and he will get the kids, and because he gets the kids, and they were married at the time that she got that settlement.
Oh, he figured that 15 M's.
He about to get broken off and make off.
I feel like the only reason that Cassie sued was because of him.
I was gonna ask you about that. No. I was gonna ask you about that. Isn't the nature in which she sued him blackmail? She literally wrote a book and sent it to him like, nigga, I'm gonna release it if you don't.
No, I told you that's what happens. That's what happens. I mean, I don't care if it's a car wreck. Your client, Will Show, was on his phone watching porn videos and not paying attention. And according to the car, it swerved 3 times just 5 minutes before, and he didn't stop his behavior. And now he did this and killed my client's kids. And if you don't do this, and the trucking company is also liable because they should have known, because they have in-dash cameras and he was on his phone that should have been reported and blah, 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 and this and that. And you send it and you say, pay me X amount.
Yeah.
And if you don't, I'm filing. You got 48 hours.
Damn.
That's not uncommon, man.
That's crazy. One of the other stories that happened was there was a guy that stormed the Capitol who actually was one of the was one of the sex workers, right? And he told his testimony after he got arrested about how the sex parties went down. Everybody thought he was crazy. The Odie guy. And then he got a flash drive and recorded one of the sessions because Cassie actually passed out during one of the freak offs because she overdosed. And he wanted to have footage to be like, hey, nigga, it wasn't me. So he sent the footage to them. They settled out for $5 million, but he was still able to tell his story. How was that possible? If I give you $5 million, I can still go out and tell the story. Because
you cannot negotiate to not tell on a criminal issue. If it's a criminal matter, I cannot pay you not to talk to the police. Because that in itself, dun dun dun,
it's criminal.
Yes. And so, you know, these NDAs and all these other things that they got going on, you know, dealing with these criminal acts, man, that don't work.
So, wait, hold on. I think you just dropped another bombshell. So, these criminal NDAs, that's if you're doing anything illegal with the NDA.
You cannot pay someone to look. Let me say this. Let me correct myself on that.
Okay.
Let me correct myself on that. So going back to the Bill Cosby trial, when he was first sued, the woman wasn't supposed to say anything. The DA knew about it, and so that agreement was had, and that's one of the reasons why Cosby was able to get out of jail, because it breached that contract that he had, that case would never be filed. So there are certain agreements that you can make in that regards, but paying someone hush money is and we've known instances in which that's happened, right? In which you can go back to the Kobe Bryant case that was filed, eventually went nowhere, they settled. So anytime that you have a victim of a crime that has a civil matter, sometimes the criminal case may go away if it is negotiated at the time that in return for compensation, the witness is now becoming an unwilling witness and refusing to testify unless subpoenaed, and the state decides that they won't go any further because they see that justice has been done and the victim is made whole. And so there's there's a couple of different scenarios.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what this NDA really covers because, like, say I get an assistant, right, and then she comes to my, like, you don't tell nothing that's going on, we agree or whatever. She comes to my house and I'm cooking crack, and then, you know what I'm saying? And then she leaves and then she tells like, hey, he was cooking crack in there. I mean, am I protected?
Well, if the police come to her and say, hey, look, we know you were in there, you know he's in there cooking crack. We want you to testify to what you saw.
I was like, you know, you got that NDA, girl. You better not tell.
But there have been instances in which people have not spoken up, right? And so Cassie could have actually went in there and said she don't recall. She could have woodied the whole. She could have woodied the whole trial.
So why didn't she? Is that bad counsel?
No, man, I don't know what's in Doc, it's something, there's something underlining about all of that. It's something underlining about all of that as far as, and it's personal. I mean, anybody who's watching this, there's something personal going on that we really don't know, right? It's something that's going on that we really don't know about. And I think a large part of that is why she did what she did, because once she got her money, a normal person would have thought that she would have been in the win.
So it originally came with a plea deal of 15 years. If you're representing Diddy, what do you tell him?
That's his call, man.
Well, being that you don't know everything that's on the table right now, the prosecutor's evidence, right? But do you take it to trial? Like, do you want to take it to trial from what you see?
This is the problem a lot of times with these cases, in the sense that federal judges do what they want to do. And you really have to have the prosecutor on your side in order to get what you want out of the deal. And so he could plead to a lesser included or something different and maybe get 10, or present to the judge a rationale why he should get less. But because of this video and the evidence, I don't see a judge being lenient. I just don't.
Even though it's like ridiculously old, like
it is a federal court judge. I don't know if you've been before many of them.
No, I've never.
But
thank God.
But they don't play.
Right.
They don't play, and their sense of, how should I say it? They have a very high sense of decency, and that act and these acts and beating a woman probably shocks their senses in a way that I don't.
Monster.
Mr. Combs.
You're a monster.
But does this warrant life though? Because that's what he's facing, right? He's facing life in prison.
Man, look here. The federal statute is what the federal statute is. And there's this kind of going back to the crack versus cocaine. You can have the same amount of cocaine and the same amount of crack, and it's 1 to 99. You gone for the same for a rock. For the same size of cocaine, you not even looked at. You're like, man, go to rehab and bring me a note back from your doctor and we'll dismiss the case. So it's just.
But that seems like they're targeting black men when they do stuff like that, because they know that when you think about cocaine, that's a more expensive drug than crack, which was targeted for the black people. So it's like.
In that sense, it was because crack cocaine was linked to, and I grew up in that era. Crack cocaine was linked to the violence that took place on street corners, right? I mean, Omar wasn't a fictional character. Omar wasn't fictional. Now, their name may not have been Omar,
right?
But Omar was in B-More, he was in Houston, he was in Dallas. And whenever, and this is the thing I always tell people, whenever you have a heightened sense of violence, it creates additional waves of violence. Because if you think about it, there was violence based on crack and territory. Then it was robbing crack dealers. And then it became basically carjacking became deadly. Like they weren't even waiting for you to get out your car and hotwire it. They were just hitting you at a stoplight, shooting you and pulling you out the car. And so whenever you have a feeding frenzy like that, you create these feeding frenzies, it gets dangerous. And so they saw crack as something that was a threat to their sense of decency. And so that's why it ended up getting some of the harsh treatment that it did. So I don't think it had anything to do wholeheartedly with color, because you got to remember too, they have prosecuted some pretty high profile white men as well, and white women in these type of cases.
Epstein
and his assistant or his friend, a female. You know, so they've gone after some pretty high profile individuals on all sides.
What makes a judge? I mean, I'm sitting there and this is a question for me. How do you become like a judge, like so higher than the lawyer or anything like that? Why do we have to respect the judge so much? Can you dive in that for me? Like, what is the protocol of these judges?
You said it right there. It's the same reason why we fixed the pastor's lunch first. Everything has protocol and a sense of decorum to it. Without that, you have chaos.
Right. So what do you have to do different to be a judge? Is it just
So, and this is interesting. I'm going to encourage someone who doesn't have a law degree and doesn't plan on going to law school. Usually in every state, there is a position, a judicial position that doesn't require you to be a lawyer. In Texas, it's a justice of the peace. You don't have to be a lawyer. Any one of you could be a justice of the peace. You just have to get elected. So, you know, Jeff could be in a black robe next November.
That's right.
You know, slapping the gavel down, talking about guilty.
Yeah.
Pay him.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Dismiss.
no schooling or anything? So, I mean, do you have to have any schooling or anything?
No. They send you to like a 2-day school just to know the basis of what you need to say. But all of those things are basically ruled on by someone listening.
What about like a federal judge?
That you have to be a lawyer in, and that you have to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. And so they have to vote on you and confirm you. And usually you're a presidential pick in that regard.
Can we switch topics to the Tory real quick? I just got to ask a question about this Tory Lanez case, bro. Because Tory Lanez came out.
Man, you're gonna get me kicked out of Houston. For all my people in Houston, man, he asked me this question. I'm just answering it based on my legal knowledge and what I know is not anything personal.
It's not personal, baby.
It's not personal. So I still need to go to the Timmy Chan's and Frenchie's. So don't block me out.
So Tory Lanez comes out. Number one, he sends a text message to Jason Lee and says, I was protecting a black woman. I didn't want to tell on her. Kelsey really is the one that shot Megan, right? So the first thing that came to my mind was, well, Kelsey did get immunity. Why didn't he just say that, right? There's a lot of people saying, why didn't you just say that? Number two, they're coming out and they're saying that there's new evidence that's showing that he didn't have any gunpowder on his hand. There's no DNA on the gun. Number one, is any of that true?
I find it hard to believe that that's true and it wasn't used in the first trial. I mean, because at that point, you have reason for the judges or for an appellate court to have this case retried. It just doesn't make sense. If your attorney did not ask you those questions, did not seek to do that on their own and have those things tested and look at the police reports. And if it wasn't included in the police reports and you didn't ask about it in the police reports, you did not do your job.
So it's two things, right? Wouldn't he have? Well, I guess he wasn't on the stand, right? But doesn't perjury come into this? I mean, Meg flat out said Tory shot me. He's flat out saying Kelsey shot him. Kelsey went on the stand and just pled the fifth. You know, what do you make of all this? Number one, we're still confused as to what happened, right? It still sounds like, what the hell? It still feels like Tory's trying to win the public opinion versus the actual sentence. So he actually he's put in jail because of the aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, right?
Right.
So if his hand is not if he really has new evidence, right, that's showing that it's not, can he get out? What is the process for him to get out?
So at that point, you have to take, because I've done this actually we did this on a 20 or 30 year rape case in which, you take the new evidence and then you submit that to the Court of Appeals and you show them why this case should be remanded and sent back and retried based on the fact, or just outwardly dismissed. And that's kind of what happens with the Innocent Project. When you see these guys who've served all these, or women who served all these years in prison, and they didn't have DNA available at the time. And then when they did the DNA from the actual kit that was used, and it doesn't match the person that they have in jail, then at that point, that information is then sent to an appeals court. That court then sees the new evidence and sends it back to the original court to say, okay, you deal with this. There wasn't enough, or there's new information that shows that you need to deal with this all over again. And a lot of times when you do that, prosecutors, you really have to have the prosecutor on board in order to get something like that done. In this case, they're not going to have the prosecutor on board, but they're definitely going to have to show that there was some evidence that was not provided to them based on the Michael Morton Act, in which the state is supposed to turn over everything to them, regardless of if it's harmful to the state's case or not. They have to turn over everything. If they didn't do that, then at that particular point, you have grounds for appeal for prosecutorial misconduct.
When not snitching goes wrong. Right? If he gets overturned, could Megan be charged?
There's a hard and fast unwritten rule that rarely do victims charged. They just don't do it.
Even if they lie?
They don't do it. You got to think about it. Maybe 2002, 2003, there was a teacher in Rowlett or Rockwall, Texas, that was accused by 3 high school young women of sexual assault or sexual misconduct. He was fired, he was arrested, and before he was convicted, it came out that it wasn't true. I think one of the young women came forward, and the whole story unraveled, and this guy lost everything. And there is nothing to come back from on situations like this.
That seems like that's a chink in the armor of the law.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I think Jay-Z sued Tony Busby and the victim that eventually dismissed their case.
Because that hurt Jay-Z.
It hurt Jay-Z, but at the same time, your recourse is to sue in civil court the people who harmed you. I mean, even perjury is so unlikely because a judge has to do that. And most judges don't do it. They don't do it. I had a case where this woman lied about, I paid and I gave $10,000 and this and I did that and did this and did that. And it was a simple eviction case. And she said she did all these things and the judge recessed it and so the woman could go get her evidence, and she left, right? And so we end up getting what we wanted, but she perjured herself on the stand, and the judge didn't do anything about it, and it was egregious.
A lot of people are gonna say, why didn't Tory just get on the stand and say that? Like, why didn't he just say,
Counsel, you have to be very careful when you put your client up, because when you put your client up, once you open that door, there's no closing that door, right? So if you knew your significant other did some things that you two know about, but you don't want anybody else to know about, you don't put them on the stand, because you might put them on the stand to ask them a simple question like, did they make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on Saturday? But then at that point, the door is open for me to ask any and everything that I feel is relevant to proving your credibility.
objection, sustained.
Yeah.
No, man, it's like, I don't know, watching these court cases, it's just crazy, man. We're a week in to Diddy's thing, man. What do you predict the next 3 weeks are going to be? Because they say it's going to be 8-week trial. So what do you predict? I mean, we're already kind of getting some crazy stuff week one. What do you predict could happen?
I'm thinking we're going to start looking at days, if not weeks, or week of financial transactions. I think we're going to get maybe an expert or two to talk about Cassie's mental state. We're going to have the 2 alleged sex trafficking individuals, if we already haven't had one. And we're going to talk to experts as to the whole transportation portion of the act. And so I think they're going to lay it out to get to the conclusion that I said early on, that Cassie is not the victim. She's an unwilling co-conspirator.
When Diddy, he put up the hearts to Cassie, like, I love you, and stuff. Would you have told him, like, hey, man, don't do that?
Man, I lost a case. I lost a trial because I did something that I normally don't do. I tried the case by myself without co-counsel and someone to watch my client. And so I had 3 police officers, got each one of them to say that they lied. Got each one of them to tell a story that the other one lied. Got a civilian witness who said she saw the whole thing from the very beginning, and got her to admit that she was in the bathroom, saw a commotion up front, and pushed her way through a NCAA tournament crowd at a bar to get outside so she can see what's going on. So you didn't see it from the very beginning. Got all of that done. And the bailiff said, man, your guy lost the case for you. I said, what are you talking about? He said, man, when you had them up there and you were ripping them apart, when they were lying, when the state was asking them questions, they were lying. He said, man, he looked like the most scariest dude ever. He was angry. He was clenching his fist. He was making faces, and he was doing all these things, right? And then when you came back, then he was kind of celebrating and smiling. And he said, and you could tell the jury was no longer looking at the witness. They spent their whole time looking at your client.
Right.
And I was like, this dude. So your client's mannerisms, and we talked about it before.
Right.
You want them to stay basically stone-faced, not worried, not excited. You don't want a whole lot of hand movements. You don't want a whole lot of tales as far as how they feel the case is going. You want them to just sit there, and you want the case to be the case. And so him making a heart sign feeds into what? He's egotistical, narcissistic. Because who the hell does that to someone that they allegedly have actually beat the hell out of
Right.
and allegedly forced to have sex? You don't do that. That's not normal.
His hair is gray now,
Right.
right? Do you think that the gray hair helps him or hurts him?
I think that they don't have hair products in jail. I don't think they have hair products in jail.
Right.
So I think that is what it is.
You think if this was televised, that there would be different opinions going on in the media? Or you think?
No. I think that everyone has formed an opinion based off their own personal experience. If you are, a person of faith and you married your high school sweetheart and you've never been with anyone else, these type of acts
Are crazy.
shock your senses to the point where you can't get over